Hello, I'm Freddie and welcome to my channel, where I talk about everything pop culture and literature. In this video, I'm gonna be going through some of the most reliable reviews regarding the new Percy Jackson and the Olympians show that is about to hit Disney Plus on December 20th. I gotta say, I'm a huge Percy Jackson fan. I've been into this franchise for more than 10 years now, and I don't want much from this show. I just want something that honors the original story and doesn't make shit up like they did with the movies. And it looks like we're gonna have exactly that. Especially with the author Rick Riordan handling the scripts. Okay, now let's get into the reviews. By the way, I took this from Metacritic, a website that gathers reviews from a lot of different places, so it's pretty thorough. Let's go. Starting with IGN's review that called the show a second quest for glory. When Disney announced it was taking a second crack at the Percy Jackson novels, fans were rightly skeptical, riding the wave of young adult-inspired features that dominated theaters in the wake of Harry Potter and Twilight. Twilight. Two severely abridged films based on Rick Riordan's novels chronicling the modern-day adventures of Greek gods and demigods were released to lukewarm reception in the 2010s. IGN's own review of the first movie called it a poor man's Potter clone. Oh yeah, I guess it's kinda correct. But as more information about the new Disney Plus Percy Jackson series came out, and with Riordan heavily involved, hope began to muster. Having seen the first half of the season, I'd say those hopes were warranted. Okay, that's promising. A long-form TV series allows Riordan and his collaborators to both honor the spirit and the minutiae of the novels while adding fresh elements only this new medium could afford. The new Percy Jackson and the Olympians takes advantage of its extra runtime as best it can. 8 episodes averaging around 40 minutes each lets the story of the Lightning Thief breathe, giving us time to develop relationships with the more minor character, while also letting the audience sit with some pretty heavy themes of power, justice, and belonging. I like that they're apparently going to give more focus to minor characters because it's a wide world and there are probably going to be a lot of seasons, so yeah, that's good. The premiere in particular does an efficient, tactful job of giving us everything we need to know about Percy, his status at school, his friend Grover, and his home life, before thrusting them all into a world of myth and monster. Titled, I Accidentally Vaporized My Pre-Algebra Teacher, which to me is an amazing title. The premiere also establishes a visual tone that stands out throughout the first 4 episodes. It looks amazing. Muppet's Most Wanted director James Bobin uses dramatic lighting juxtaposed against harsh shadows and a predominantly golden blue color palette in the first episode to give the show a unique and dreamlike look that exceeds expectations set by previous Disney Plus programming. Some of that is lost in subsequent episodes, but the CG, of which there is quite a bit thanks to all the magical creatures, is well done throughout. It's only in the 1 per episode dream sequences where the use of LED screen backdrops is glaringly obvious and brings the quality down. Okay, so yeah, we have CGI problems. What's new? As much as they are an improvement over the big 3 predecessors, these episodes don't come away without their own pacing issue. Episode 2 attempts to fit a meaty training sequence from the book into its runtime, a decision that makes sense within the scope of the show, but one that forces a few elements to the sidelines. Characters like Chiron and Dionysus don't get the spotlight they deserve. Rather than playing the Obi-Wans to Percy's Luke, the duo, who seem to be the only adults running a camp full of superpowered orphans, become afterthoughts whose sole purpose is to guide the plot to its next step. Technically, they're not the only ones running camp because of Argus, but yeah, they're basically the only ones. Argus is just a security guard. Rather than a glaring oversight though, the adults' diminished roles feels like a thoughtful decision to focus on making sure the audience cares about Percy's supporting cast, especially Grover and Annabeth, who will join Percy on his quest to come, and even a few peers who saw little to no screen time in the movie. Yeah, we're gonna see Clarice a lot, I hope. Episode 4 also suffers a bit, but rather than cramming in too much story, I Plunge to My Death spends too much of its time standing still, with our protagonist confined to a train for the majority of the episode, talking about the action ahead of them. So it's like a plot dump, something like that. We get a bit more characterization along the way, but much of it feels like unnecessary tell-don't-show storytelling, especially when the previous episode does some of the best show-don't-tell of the series so far. However, it does send us into the second half of the season with a solid cliffhanger. So yeah, in the first book we have a lot to learn about mythology because, well, it's the first book, and Percy is basically Harry Potter, so he doesn't know anything about that world. So it kind of makes sense that they have these sequences where they talk a lot and there's no action. One thing that is clear in all of that talking though is the natural charisma and likability of Scobell, Simhadri, and Jeffrey. It's not necessarily in the quality of their acting. Much of the time, more serious moments can feel stiff and unconvincing. Well, they're kids and it's like their first job at acting, so it's okay. So when they get to act like kids, that they and the show shine. They come across as genuine preteens, specifically Gen Z preteens. A credit to the actors as well as their casting and the updated dialogue they're given. It's a refreshing contrast to the things played by full-grown adults elsewhere on TV. Looking at you, Riverdale. Their immaturity and senses of humor are authentic, and the stakes feel even grander when seen through their eyes. Well, that's a big thing on Percy Jackson because they're all kids and they have to, save the world. So of course it's scary for 12-year-olds. In a further sign that the second time's the charm with this particular franchise, Percy Jackson and the Olympians hit some of its highest highs when it comes to the moral questions the books originally proposed, often flipping classic myths on their head. A pertinent line from the first episode rings throughout the third, as we see Percy and Annabeth grapple with the idea that not all monsters are what they seem, and that parents aren't infallible. These are the kind of lessons that make the books great for young readers, and here they'll do the same for young viewers. We must remember it's a kids show and a kids book. Verdict. Percy Jackson and the Olympians uses its first 4 episodes wisely, adapting Rick Riordan's The Lightning Thief as accurately as possible. At times, it feels like an overcorrection, cramming in as many details from the book as it can, to the detriment of the series pacing. But at its best, it reimagines the story for a modern audience, and looking good while doing so. So yeah, the book was released almost 20 years ago, so it's good that they're reimagining it. To me, it's the most logical thing to do. TV Guide called the show a fun but lightweight coming-of-age fantasy. Tapping into middle school anxieties, Percy Jackson and the Olympians combines Greek mythic fantasy with a familiar type of coming-of-age story. Our titular hero is a 12-year-old social outcast. Targeted by bullies and misunderstood by his teachers, he struggles with school due to dyslexia and ADHD, often distracted by daydreams. Or, as we soon discover, by supernatural visions. Things come to a head in episode 1 when a teacher transforms into a winged monster and attacks him, blithely ignored by the crowds of witnesses nearby. Yeah, they're giving a short summary of the beginning of the show. It's okay. Understandably worried about seeing things that no one else can see, Percy goes to the one person who is always on his side, his mom. But her reaction is less than reassuring. Instead of calling a therapist, she reveals that Percy's absent father is actually a Greek god, and these daydreams represent Percy's supernatural inheritance. So his mom tells him, okay, that's different. His half-blood status makes him a target, and like so many children's fantasy tales before, it's time for him to find some magical mentors and embark on a quest. In this case, that begins with him enrolling at a secret summer camp for the half-human offspring of Olympian gods. As an amusing nod to the promiscuity of Greek deities, there are enough of these kids to fill a cabin with twin-age progeny for each of the major players, like Ares, Hermes, and Athena. Adapted from the first of 6 Percy Jackson novels by Rick Riordan, 6. This new Disney Plus series arrives with high expectation. I haven't read the books myself. Well, that's not good. But I know enough to understand that they boast a devoted fanbase, and the previous film adaptations were not well received. Well, yeah, not at all. This time, the author has more direct involvement with the creative process, collaborating with a pair of promising, if unexpected, showrunners, Jonathan E. Steinberg and Dan Sharp, known for gritty adult dramas like the Jeff Bridges spy thriller The Old Man, and the historical pirate series Black Sails. I haven't watched those. Percy Jackson falls squarely into the zone of children's fiction, however, framed around vintage story beats that may feel a little hackneyed to older viewers, but will satisfy newcomers to the genre. It's worth remembering that while there's an overwhelming volume of fantasy TV out there, most of it isn't suitable for kids. This series is a canny choice for Disney, a beloved, family-friendly title with the kind of live-action budget and casting we typically see aimed at adults. And Riordan clearly knows his way around the 12-year-old psyche, extrapolating universal anxieties onto a classic hero's journey narrative. What if your academic troubles and social awkwardness weren't just a normal part of growing up? What if they mean you're destined for something bigger and more important, like say, a world-saving quest? Well, I would have felt so much better about myself, that's for sure. Even after being handed a magic sword and informed that he's a demigod, Percy's troubles are thoroughly relatable. Other kids still bully him. Teachers keep giving him useless and confusing advice. His mom no longer offers comforting solutions to his problem, and his absent dad refuses to answer the metaphorical phone. Stories like this hold eternal appeal because they take the chaotic stressors of childhood, the feelings of powerlessness, the conflicts with adults who refuse to understand your perspective, and weave them into an adventure where kids get more agency over their life. These introductory episodes are simple but enjoyable fare, featuring reels of exposition from mentor figures like Percy's teacher Chiron, and a sanitized interpretation of the boozy god Dionysus. We meet other demigod kids like the charismatic Luke and the tough strategist Annabeth. Although, despite being surrounded by his alleged peers, Percy still doesn't fit in. More ominously, the camp counselors refuse to explain why his mysterious dad won't return to Earth and claim him, and they're clearly keeping other secrets too. Percy Jackson and the Olympians is at its best when dealing with Percy's friendships and personal struggles, quickly establishing him as a funny and relatable protagonist. You can already see the groundwork for Percy, Annabeth, and Percy's BFF Grover to become a tight-knit team as their adventures progress. Unfortunately, the show's fantasy world building is not quite as interesting. We're treated to a string of boilerplate introductions from various gods and monsters, in a setting that just doesn't elicit the same sense of wonder as something like Narnia or Harry Potter or Avatar: The Last Airbender. That's due in part to the rather workmanlike visual storytelling and production value, including the common problem of bad lighting during dark scenes. Although Disney has money to spend on CGI minotaurs and LED sound stages, Percy Jackson looks very similar to a slew of other urban fantasy shows on Netflix and elsewhere. It doesn't make an effort to drum up memorable locations or create mystique around its mythological world. Maybe things will get deeper in later episodes, once the initial scene setting is out of the way. Yeah, if they do right by the books, that's probably gonna happen. At any rate, Percy Jackson and the Olympians gets off to a fun and well-paced start. But it's a rather generic example of the coming-of-age fantasy formula. Well, like I said, it's been around for 20 years, so everything that came after was based off of it. So yeah, it's gonna feel generic. Now, the next one is the only bad review that I've seen so far. So yeah, prepare yourselves. Slant magazine called it a slumberous and somber adaptation. Largely missing is the coherent world building and quicksilver pacing of the novel. Author Rick Riordan once candidly described the 2010 film adaptation of his novel The Lightning Thief as my life's work going through a meat grinder. I second that. Indeed, that early attempt at adapting the first book in Riordan's kid-lit series, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, is a cheesily generic fantasy film that deviates from the book's blueprint to an extent that fans, and apparently the author, can't forgive. What then to make of the new Disney Plus series, which has the imprimatur of Riordan as executive producer and co-writer, and yet feels even further away from the spirit of the books? If fans are seeking nothing but fidelity, they'll find a faithful outline here. While Chris Columbus's 2010 film aged up its heroes, the show's version of Percy and his companions all seem like real middle schooler, and the plot points, at least based on the 4 episodes made available to press for review, map neatly onto the novel. Largely missing from this new adaptation though are Percy's whip-smart, sassy narrative voice, the coherent world building of the novels, and most importantly, Riordan's quicksilver pacing. The story of Percy, a struggling 6th grader who discovers that he's a demigod, half mortal, half Olympian, nearly scampers across the page as Riordan unfolds a hidden world of Greek monsters and deities living alongside our ordinary American reality. The central subversive conceit of Riordan's books, that ADHD and dyslexia should be celebrated as signs of godliness, animates his hero's quests with a rebellious underdog spirit. But where the novels are spry and whimsical, the series is slumberous and somber. The dreary pilot launches with a voiceover from Percy, but quickly abandons his essential sardonic perspective, ceding much of his storytelling to Percy's mother, who delivers a monsoon of breathless exposition that will be inscrutable to anyone unfamiliar with the premise. The writers don't seem settled into the rhythms of what's essentially an 8-episode miniseries. There's a simultaneous sense of frantically cramming content and stalling for time. Even the monsters seem to move in slow motion to help stretch every episode out, effectively downgrading the book's lively battles into low-tension standoff. The show's frequent cut-to-black transitions also unnecessarily interrupt what little momentum has been established. But even if the scripts seldom lend Percy and his friends the witty repartee they deserve, the lead trio, including Arian Simadri as Percy's sated protector and bestie Grover, and Leah Jeffries as Annabeth, the saltily tenacious daughter of Athena, are all charming travel companions. Scoble best channels the Percy of the books in his devastatingly skeptical side-eye reactions and self-deprecating one-liner. When Percy, still unsure of which deity is his dad, arrives at Camp Half-Blood, demigods are sorted by mortal parents, he muses. Is there a Greek god of disappointment? Maybe you should ask him if he's missing a kid. Even though that Greek god of disappointment seems unwilling to lift his curse on Percy Jackson adaptations, there is still a glimmer of what might have been in the final minute of the 2nd episode. Poseidon sends a message rippling thrillingly through Camp Half-Blood's lake to claim Percy as his own son. As a crucial part of Percy's identity suddenly clicks into place, it's a rare moment in the series worthy of a unique hero's mythic journey. Okay, I'm kind of pissed off at this person for writing this, because as I said, I'm a huge fan. I think they're complaining for nothing, because well, yeah, it's an 8-episode show and the book is not that long, so it makes sense that some scenes are slower than in the novel because they have to transmit emotion in a different way. So one way of doing it is slowing down the pace. So yeah, I mean, I said that I was pissed off, but I cannot confirm anything before I watch it. But since all of the other reviews are positive, I mean, I don't know, it seems like a very personal and unpopular opinion. And now the last one by Collider, which, from the ones I gathered, was the one with the highest score. Rick Riordan takes his story back. This young adult series is finally given a good adaptation after the author called the movies the equivalent of my life's work going through a meat grinder. It may be hard to recall it now, but there was once a dark time for Percy Jackson book fans. Specifically, it was the release of 2 films that left them, as well as critics at the time, mostly perplexed about what these adaptations even were. This extended to the creator of the book series, Rick Riordan, who ended up becoming one of their most vocal detractors, as he felt that the story being told on screen wasn't even really his. When the film franchise dragged to an unceremonious close, even as it tried to make a bit of a course correction with the second installment, there was a sense of relief rather than sadness, because it left open the door for a potential fresh start. Still, it left many who remember reading these books burned by the experience and uncertain about future prospects for this story. Such worries can now be put to rest as the new series Percy Jackson and the Olympians finally feels like this story is being done right. Crucially, while there are indeed showrunners in Jonathan E. Steinberg and Dan Schatz, the series also credits Riordan himself as one of the writers. This may seem obvious, considering that he wrote the book, but it's clear that the author has been included in the process this time around. This doesn't necessarily ensure an adaptation will be good, but the first half of this 8-episode season already feels like it is in better hands. While there are other beloved films and shows that you hope the original author will stay far away from, for reasons that extend beyond the work themselves, Percy Jackson is not one of them. While the bar this series had to clear was low, it actually feels substantive and thought out in contrast to the scattered movies that were understandably rejected by fans of the books. Percy Jackson and the Olympians serves as a breath of fresh air for a story that was once gasping for it. Wow, I like this sentence. For those unaware of this history, Percy Jackson and the Olympians is about young demigods living in the modern world where they are often largely unaware of their power. In this case, we first see this through the eyes of the young Percy, who is just trying to get through school before he is unexpectedly drawn into a magical world that he has always seen from a distance. While much of this feels like your classic young adult story, it is all given a bit more history in how Riordan draws extensively from mythology, which he then puts his own spin on. Sure, there are elements of quests and iconic monsters that will be familiar to anyone who has cracked open a book on Greek deities, but they are filtered through a distinctly modern lens about kids trying to survive in a world where adults, be they human or god, have abandoned them. In Percy's case, he is lucky that he still has his mother Sally and his friend Grover, as well as a new ally, Annabeth, as he will need them all on the journey ahead. What is the journey? Well, it surrounds Percy's father, who has been missing since he was young, and a certain electrifyingly powerful item that is believed to have been stolen from the gods. Book readers will already know the general outline of this plot, and the series sticks relatively close to it. However, this matters less than the way the show brings it all to life. While there was frustration with the changes made in the movies, there might have been room for forgiveness if they had more life and charm. Percy Jackson and the Olympians also makes changes that, while not as drastic, work because of the way the show is all constructed. The first episode, I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher, is economical and efficient by relying on narration to fill in some gaps while still having plenty of energy woven throughout. It has more room to explore some of the setup than the book, but it also does something more with the same. The relationship between Percy and his mother feels authentic and lived in, with Cool especially giving a really strong performance with what little time she has. When the series becomes a bit more of a spectacle, with a car chase on a stormy night where the group is being pursued by a mythical creature, you care because of the way these characters have been fleshed out. There is earned humor just as there is an emotional connection to the stakes of Percy's world, which is about to be appended. It allows you to overlook some occasionally iffy effects, which the series does smartly use sparingly and under the cover of darkness, because you're invested in the people themselves. While there is still a long road ahead, it feels like the series has finally captured who these characters heading out on the adventure truly are, instead of checking off boxes of the book's narrative beats. Although some of the subsequent episodes are less engaging than the first, with the dynamic between Percy and Sally, it manages to settle into a fun adventure groove. It's no reservation dogs, but the well-cast group of kids actually feel like kids, rather than actors putting on a how do you do fellow kids act that feels off no matter who is doing it. Logan Lerman innocent. It is their authentically realized motivations and performances that are driving the experience in a way that renders you along for the ride, no matter where it takes you. Percy Jackson and the Olympians does right by the books, even with some imperfections here and there, notably a particular casting of one deity that feels out of place. In everything from the costume to the demeanor of the person wearing it, you're willing to overlook them for all the show succeeds at. Actually, I checked, and this deity is Hermes, which I'm surprised that he appears in this season, but okay. There is even one scene that, without spoiling anything, captures a sense of falling with such effectiveness that is briefly yet terrifyingly mesmerizing as time slows down. And it's probably the scene where he falls into the river. Percy Jackson and the Olympians will still work best for a younger audience, as any moments of peril remain firmly in family-friendly territory, though it doesn't skimp on crafting its sequences with an eye for keeping the attention of older readers as well. Considering the talent that is yet to come, there is a sense that Percy Jackson is finally being given the care he deserves. For the first time, the lightning in a bottle that was the simple yet sturdy series of books has actually been captured on screen. Readers needn't pray to the gods for anything more. as this series is already delivering everything they could have hoped for. Okay, so in summary, most people liked it. There was that one person that hated it apparently, but in general, it's a good adaptation of the books. It's fun, it's for kids as well as the books, and it does right by the original story. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to watch it. And of course, it releases on December 20th, only at Disney+. And that's it. Thank you for watching. I know there was a lot of reading, but well, I was reading reviews, so there was nothing I could do. And if my English sounded weird at times, it's because it's not my first language. So sorry about that. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel, and click on the notification bell to not miss any of my next video. And I'll see you again soon. Bye!